Hi, this is Bjørn. Today I'm going to talk about self-published fantasy blog off competition, also known as SPFBO. First, let me explain what SPFBO is. It's a competition in search of the best indie fantasy book released in the last year. It's organized by Mark Lawrence, who is a pretty damn well-known author and doesn't need to organize competitions for indies. So we're very thankful that he does. 300 books are submitted and divided between 10 judging teams. Some of those teams can just be one person, and then it's like super difficult. And I'm going to explain why. My team was Queen's Book Asylum, and there were 6 of us. But before I became a judge this year, I was a participant 2 years ago. And here's what it looks like from the participant side. I submitted Children in 2021. And I actually didn't get far. I didn't get into semifinals, and even more didn't get into the finals. I received very nice, very detailed reviews from Lynn's Books and Critic and Chemist, and thank you very, very much for this. And I almost went even more insane than usual because my book was reviewed as the second from last in the first phase, which means it was reviewed in October. And the competition technically starts in June, but the books are submitted on May 10th this year. So that means I had to wait for almost 6 months, and it turns out that I am not someone who can be patient for 6 months. When the book did not get any further, I was really honestly quite delighted because it was too much for me. I don't have the mental resilience to go through a year. And of course, the second phase is much more difficult than the first. Because in the first, each team goes through 30 books, and they pick their semi-finalists, and then they pick one finalist. Which means 29 books do not make the cut into the finals. And here is the first problem. The books are allocated randomly. Obviously, Mark Lawrence doesn't read 300 books to score them first and then decide who gets what so that the competition is even. So some groups can have a lot of really, really good books, and then another group can have 30 quite average books. But each of them has to choose one finalist. In 2021, when I participated, the finalist was Hall of Bones by Tim Hardy, and I watched the finals really excited because there were quite a few books that I was really invested in. This year, well, I didn't participate this year, I judged, and I found out what it's like when you are actually behind the curtain and there is a very, very anxious audience waiting to find out what happens next. So as I said, each team gets 30 books, and there are 10 teams. Some of those teams are only one person, for instance, one YouTuber. And that means that over the course of 11 months, this one person has to read 39 books. 30 from their own group, and then 9 more finalists over 11 months. Personally, I read quite wide, but there are times when I just don't feel like reading fantasy. When you are a one-person team, well, too bad, you don't feel like reading it. You have a deadline. You will read 39 fantasy books, whether you feel like it or not. Also, when it comes to fantasy, there's a lot of, fantasy is not just one genre where everything is the same and everyone runs around with swords. There is cozy fantasy, urban fantasy, epic fantasy, low stakes, high stakes, hard magic, soft magic, I actually don't know. But at the end, I, for instance, really don't like horror, and I don't like gore. If there is a lot of blood and a lot of bloodshed surrounded by blood, in blood, or worse, I'm just not going to read this book. But if I was a one-person judging team, I wouldn't be able to say, well, I don't like horror. I would have to read the book. and I would have to review it and score it as objectively as possible, even though everything inside me would want me to stop on page 2. I was in Team Queen's Book Asylum, and there were 6 of us, and our agreement was that each book is going to have at least 3 reviewers in the semifinals and 4 in the finals. I was very lucky because I had certain limitations related to my mental health, and Team Queen's Book Asylum permitted me to sort of set my own terms, let's say, for the lack of a better word. So I've read, I think, between 12 and 14 books, I think. And yes, I was able to say this book is too dark for me, I'm not going to read it. And then all of us who have read that particular book scored it and reviewed it. And it turned out that even between the 6 of us, or sometimes the 3 of us, we have different tastes. I picked my favorite book for a semi-finalist, and that book did not become the finalist. Something else became the finalist, even though I really lobbied for my choice because obviously my taste is the best. And then 29 books did not become our finalist. In other groups, there were books I was really rooting for, and they did not get into semifinals either, because the judges had a different taste than mine and picked a different book. Or maybe they just had 10 amazing books, which I will not read because there is no way I'm going to read 300 books. So they picked something else. And I almost ruined everything. SPFBO comes with deadlines. The first part ends at the end of October, when the finalists have to be announced. So that's the first 30 books cut down to 1. And then the 10 finalists have to be judged before the end of April, which means we have 5 months to read and review 10 books. And this is actually more difficult than it seems. I would like to apologize to the winner. Luckily, the winner. I am so glad. Congratulations to Morgan Stang, because I got the deadline wrong. Instead of the day that the reviews were supposed to be submitted, I sent mine in on the days when they already got published 5 hours earlier. And my score was 8.5, and as I checked, that would actually alter the book's score by 0.05. So fast forward until literally 2 days before the end of the competition, and it up to Murder at Spindle Manor and K.E. Andrews' Hills of Heather and Bone with precisely the same score. And obviously the 2 most stressed out people were the authors. But I think I was the 3rd person that was the most stressed out, because it looked like my 0.05 point might actually make the difference. At the end, luckily it didn't. Again, congratulations to Morgan Stang for winning. With my score, you would win by extra 0.05, but it would not change the order and it would not introduce a tie. And that made me so relieved. This is why I mentioned timing. I already missed 1 deadline. And there were times when I just didn't feel like reading a certain book, but I didn't want to miss another deadline. So I had to put aside whatever else I was reading and read that particular book. And sometimes that was very rewarding. Because, for instance, Arrival Most Vile by R.K. Ashwick, I did not really intend to read the book. And then I read the book, and I loved the book, and I would very much like to read the sequel. But actually I was feeling like reading something else. Except we had a deadline when the reviews go up, when the scores go up, and too bad that I feel like reading something else. And then, of course, as the reviews came in from other teams and the top 10 started taking shape, books that I thought were amazing just didn't get that many points. And books that I thought were kind of started getting quite a lot of points. But also in our team, there's 6 people. I picked a few books that I thought were just, fantastic. And then one of the judges would be like, I can't even finish this. And I get quite personally invested in those things. Especially when I really love something, I just want to shout it from the mountaintop. But I don't get to tell other judges that, your score doesn't count because mine is better. And then there were also, other teams. And some of the books got quite a lot of points, and we just didn't see that. Well, too bad, because people have different tastes. And the judges have different tastes, and the teams have different tastes. Another of my favorite books ended up last in the top 10. And I did not see that coming, but other people have different tastes. Then when it comes to timing, there's also the order in which we read the books. If I just read something that I didn't really like and the next book is very good, I'm going to give it a higher score than if I just read an absolute masterpiece and the next one is just very good. If today I looked at something horrible, like for instance the news, and I'm reading something, realistic, then I'm probably going to rate it lower because at that particular moment I need escapism. And 2 weeks later, when I don't make the mistake of looking at the news, I might like this book better, but the review is already up. And this is just what our team is like. I have no idea what rules other teams have. I don't know how they work. I really, really can't imagine doing it by myself. 39 books over 11 months, and you just don't get to say, I don't feel like reading indie fantasy at the moment. Sometimes there's a book that is, for instance, not quite edited well, or has a lot of typos, or feels very, very slow, or very, very fast, or whatever, there's a reason for me to just not like the book. I spent a lot of time writing reviews because I don't want to hurt the authors. Because I know what it feels like to get a review that says, your book was slow and had a lot of typos and I hated the editing. But also a lot of the time, a book is perfect. And then the problem is opposite. Last year, Olivia Atwater's Small Miracles got 9.5 from me, and I won the entire competition, which made me feel very validated in my perfect taste. It got 9.5 because it was an ebook and it had a lot of footnotes. And in the ebook, you don't really know what the footnotes are, and some of them were necessary and some were not. But if I had a paperback, it would probably be a 10 points because I just wouldn't know what to say other than this book was really, really, really great and I loved everything about it, which is not really a review. So on one side you have the I don't want to gush and say nothing of substance, and on the other you have I don't want to be a horrible human being. And then comes the conflict of interest. I was very lucky this year because in our group, I think I didn't know any of the authors personally. I don't remember, but I think I didn't know anybody personally. And then in the finals, I knew 2 people close enough that I could say I have a relationship with this person that is just too close for me to be 100% objective. Of course, I would love to just, completely disconnect the author from the book and forget that I have been friends with this author for this long and so on, but I can't. But then there were the 8 other books, and luckily, maybe because I've been away from social media, I didn't know any of the authors. I never interacted with them. I never interacted with them. But if I did, I would have to figure out how much is too much. Maybe we exchanged 3 direct messages and we said hi to each other. And maybe we are the kind of friends that, click like on each other's posts. And maybe we once talked about something really deep, but like that was 3 years ago and we never spoke since then. And maybe I know that this person is dealing with something really horrible, and if I give them a bad score, they will feel even worse. This is difficult stuff. The thing is that the indie writing scene is actually not that big. A lot of the time authors know each other, judges know each other, authors know the judges, and the judges know the authors on various levels. Luckily, again, this year this did not happen. But especially, again, when you are a one-person team and you cannot just say, why doesn't somebody else read this? I just have so much respect to people who manage to do this on their own. My exes don't write books, but imagine that my ex wrote a book. That would be difficult. This coming year, I will not be judging. I don't know whether the teams have been announced by the time I post this, so I'm just going to say that Queen's Book Asylum is coming back. I really enjoyed judging. I really enjoyed this competition. But also I think about how many books I've missed. Because I have read 15 maybe, which means I did not read 285 books that could have potentially changed my life. One of the groups has not picked as a finalist a book that I insisted was the absolute best in the competition, which means that if I didn't know that book and that author, I would have missed on it. I don't know how many other books like this there were. So, to finish it off, the next round of SPFBO X begins on May 10 when the books are being submitted. There'll be 24 hours to submit the books, and then randomly 300 of them will be chosen, because this year, last year, the 300 slots have been filled over 41 minutes. SPFBO is growing. I looked at the authors, at the list of authors and books before it started, and I just felt so happy to see so many names I didn't know, and to think this community is much bigger than I actually thought. Just because I don't know somebody from Twitter, that doesn't mean that they're not writing great books. I saw a few names that I recognized, and I found out they had new books out, and that was also very exciting. So I'm really, really looking forward to the next edition. Even if I'm not judging in it, I just can't wait to see what happens. I'll be cheering from the sides, hoping for the best outcome, which will be the book I would pick personally, and I don't know which one it will be because there will be 300 surprises waiting. I would like to thank Mark for organizing this whole thing, for starting this whole thing, Timmy from Queen's Book Asylum, and my wonderful teammates for dealing with me. I would like to congratulate the winner, everybody else in the finals, everyone in the semifinals, and everybody else who took part.